If you are a skinny guy who has been going to the gym, eating what feels like a massive amount of food, training consistently, and still not gaining a single pound of visible muscle, then this video is going to tell you something that nobody in the fitness industry is being completely honest with you about. Because the reason you are still skinny is not your metabolism, it is not your genetics being a death sentence, and it is not some mysterious hormonal condition that makes you immune to muscle growth. It is a specific combination of physiological realities, chronic behavioral errors, and deeply embedded psychological patterns that are working together to keep you exactly where you are. And understanding all three layers simultaneously is the only way you will ever break out of it. The first layer is physiological, and it starts with the single most common and most consequential lie that skinny guys tell themselves, which is that they eat a lot, because the research on this is both clear and humbling. A landmark study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition by Lichtman and colleagues demonstrated that people systematically underestimate their caloric intake by an average of 47%, meaning the person who believes they are eating 3,000 calories per day is statistically likely to be eating closer to 1,600. And this error is not random or evenly distributed. It is largest in people who eat irregularly, who eat mostly whole foods without tracking, and who rely on subjective feelings of fullness as their primary calorie gauge, which describes almost every skinny guy who claims to eat a lot almost perfectly. Your stomach is not a reliable calorie counter. It is a volume detector, and because skinny guys typically have a combination of faster gastric emptying, lower appetite hormones, and higher sensitivity to satiety signals, they feel genuinely, uncomfortably full on caloric amounts that are nowhere near sufficient for muscle growth, which is why subjective hunger is a completely unreliable guide to caloric sufficiency for anyone with an ectomorphic body type, and the only solution that the research supports is objective calorie tracking using a food scale and a tracking application for a minimum of 4 weeks to establish exactly what you are actually eating versus what you believe you are eating. Because you cannot fix a deficit you cannot measure. The second physiological reality that keeps skinny guys skinny is what exercise scientists call the thermic effect adaptation, more commonly known as non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT, and this is the phenomenon where individuals with naturally lean body types unconsciously increase their physical activity in response to increased caloric intake. They fidget more, they stand more, they walk more, they are more restless, and this unconscious increase in daily movement burns off a significant portion of the caloric surplus that was supposed to go toward muscle growth. And a study from the Mayo Clinic by James Levine and colleagues showed that neat differences between individuals can account for up to 2,000 calories per day of variation in total daily energy expenditure, meaning two people eating identical diets and doing identical workouts can have completely different body composition outcomes based entirely on how much they unconsciously move throughout the day. For skinny guys trying to gain muscle, this means your caloric surplus target needs to be meaningfully higher than any online calculator suggests. Not because the calculator is wrong, but because your body is burning more than the calculator accounts for through unconscious movement that increases the moment you start eating more. Aim for a minimum of 300 to 500 calories above your calculated maintenance and track your weight weekly, adjusting upward by 200 calories whenever your weight hasn't increased for 2 consecutive weeks. The third layer is the training mistakes that keep skinny guys skinny. And the most damaging one is the obsession with isolation exercises and high-volume bodybuilding programs designed for people who are already carrying significant muscle mass and need to bring up lagging body parts. When a skinny guy walks into a gym and does 4 sets of bicep curls, 4 sets of tricep pushdowns, 3 sets of lateral raises, and 3 sets of chest flies in the same session, they have done enormous amounts of work, generated significant fatigue, and created almost no stimulus for systemic muscle growth. Because isolation exercises do not create the hormonal and mechanical environment required for whole body anabolic adaptation in someone starting from a very low muscle mass baseline. The research on resistance training for muscle hypertrophy in untrained individuals is unambiguous. Compound movements that load multiple large muscle groups simultaneously, specifically the squat, deadlift, barbell row, overhead press, and bench press, create the greatest acute hormonal response, including testosterone and growth hormone, recruit the greatest number of motor units, and stimulate the largest total volume of muscle tissue per unit of time. And for a skinny guy whose primary goal is to add systemic muscle mass, a program built around 3 to 4 heavy compound movements performed with progressive overload, adding weight to the bar every session or every week, will outperform a high-volume, isolation-based bodybuilding split by a factor that isn't even close. The fourth and deepest layer is psychological, and it is the one that overrides all the physiological and training knowledge in the world if it isn't addressed. It is what psychologists call a fixed mindset around body type, a concept rooted in Carol Dweck's foundational research on implicit theories of intelligence and ability, applied specifically to physical development. When a skinny guy has been told his entire life that he is just built that way, that he has a fast metabolism, that he is naturally thin and always will be, he internalizes these statements as fixed biological facts, rather than as current conditions that are changeable through behavior, and this internalization creates a self-fulfilling prophecy that operates through a mechanism called behavioral confirmation. He unconsciously behaves in ways that confirm the identity he has accepted. Eating slightly less than he needs because deep down he doesn't believe eating more will work. Training slightly less intensely because he doesn't believe his body responds to training the way other people's do. Quitting programs slightly earlier than the adaptation timeline requires because he interprets the slow initial progress as confirmation that his genetics won't allow growth. A study on self-efficacy and physical performance by Albert Bandura at Stanford demonstrated that an individual's belief in their capacity to produce a specific outcome is the strongest predictor of the behavioral persistence required to achieve that outcome. Stronger than actual ability, stronger than knowledge, stronger than program quality, meaning if you are a skinny guy who fundamentally believes at the identity level that your body cannot change significantly, that belief will generate the exact pattern of inconsistent effort, premature program abandonment, and unconscious behavioral sabotage that will make it true. And breaking this cycle requires not just a new program, but a deliberate and conscious reconstruction of your physical identity through daily exposure to evidence that contradicts the fixed narrative. Track your lifts and watch them increase. Take monthly photos and compare them obsessively. Surround yourself with information about people who had your exact body type and transformed it, because your nervous system updates its self-model based on evidence. And if you deliberately feed it contradictory evidence consistently enough, the fixed identity begins to crack. The complete answer to why skinny guys stay skinny is this: you are almost certainly eating less than you think by a margin of 30 to 50%. Your body is burning off your surplus through unconscious NEAT increases. Your training is built around isolation work that creates fatigue without systemic growth stimulus. And at the deepest level, you carry a fixed identity around your body type that generates the subtle behavioral inconsistencies that prevent you from ever applying any solution long enough to see it work. Fix your tracking, eat 300 to 500 above your measured maintenance, and adjust weekly. Build your program around heavy compound movements with progressive overload as the non-negotiable central principle, and start collecting daily evidence that challenges the story you have been telling yourself about what your body is capable of. Because the skinny guy who does all four of these things simultaneously and consistently for 6 to 12 months does not stay skinny, he never has. And with the understanding you now have, neither will you.